and if the recording quality is good, we'll even use it for future reference if you guys want. Alright? Excellent. So I'm showing you a notepad file here, and this really is our agenda for today. So I'm going to talk about types of companies. I'm going to show you an invoice template and a quotation template, and I'm going to talk about freelancing. So what is freelancing? I would like to take some answers. So question is, what is freelancing? So anybody would like to answer that question, go ahead. What is freelancing is the question. Alright, so we have some answers. So are you able to see it now? Yes, so let's go ahead and try to answer the question. So what is freelancing is my question. So Shirish is saying that taking up tasks individually and getting paid for that task, like contract, not time based but task based. Okay, that's a good answer, Shirish. Thank you very much. Somebody else, anybody else? Once again, question is, what is freelancing? So I'm going to type some answers here. So as Shirish has mentioned, it's taking up tasks, so working on contracts, right, is freelancing. Excuse me about that, it was my phone bell ringing and I had to keep my phone on just to help any student or any participant who is not able to log into the session. So I'm just going to make it silent now. Alright, so I'm back, and what we are talking about is what is freelancing. So working on contracts, correct? So taking tasks, it's working on your own for others so that your profit or loss is your own. So yes, I assume that you are talking about making profit or loss out of the work that you are doing. So working on contracts or projects, correct? Now these could be on fixed price basis or could also be on hourly basis. The popular name for this is time and material or T&M, right? So a lot of people call this as T&M kind of projects. So you could work on a project, let's say a writing project, so where you are going to say that this is how much I am going to pay, or this is how much I am going to charge, and then this is what I am going to do, right? So somebody will either give you a fixed price or will pay you on an hourly basis, saying that since you have worked for me for 20 hours, I am going to pay you for 20 hours. But then what is different? Now the difference here is you are working on your own, correct? Which means you are earning your own money / salary from your work, correct? Which means you are not an employee of another company. So you are not employed, you are not going to work for somebody else on salary. people are going to pay you, yes, but then they are going to pay you based on the service that you are going to provide to them, right? So that's what I would say is freelancing. So how can you do that? So number one, you can simply go to people and tell them that I am Makram Pandit, I am a technical writer, I am a content writer, and this is how I am a charge. So if I do your project, please pay me this much. That's something that I may do. Or the other option is you say that this is my hourly rate, this is how I charge, and you have to pay this much if I do X number of hours of work for you. Now for freelancing, you may need to have a business entity, correct? So what do I mean by business entity? So business entity is name of an entity under which you will work, correct? For example, let me give you an example. So my name is Makran Pandit and the name of my company is Technowrites. In fact, it is Technowrites Private Limited, and we'll come to this private limited part in a bit of a minute. So I don't say that I am Makram Pandit and you have to pay Makram Pandit. I say I am Makram Pandit, I have a company, I work for a company, and then you have to make payments to Technowrites. Now why do I do that? I do that so that my business creates an identity for me, correct? So Technowrites today has got an identity. So this today is synonymous to technical writing. So it has got identity, or it has got a brand of its own, correct? And if you are successful at some point of time, right, I'll say Technowrites will be, or let's say is bigger than Makram Pandit, correct? So when Narayan Murthy started working, he did not say his company, he was working as Narayan Murthy. He formed a company and he called it as Infosys. And there were many others who were working with him as well. So what are the types of companies that you can create? Number one, you can create a proprietorship, or you can create a partnership, or you can create a private limited or a public limited company. What is a proprietorship? A proprietorship is a business entity or a simplest business entity to create. To start a proprietorship or to start a small business entity of your own, you will need to register for what we call as Mumbai Shop Act. And let me show you that file here. So image coming up for you on the screen, and I hope you are all able to see it. If not, please let me know. So I am showing you a scanned image of the Shop Act license of Technowrites. So it says Mumbai Dukane व संस्था अधिनियम संस्थेच्या नोंदणीचा दाखला, and you can see Technowrites Private Limited. So even a private limited company needs to have a Shop Act. Now this is called as a Shop Act license. So if you are going to work on your own, unless you are going to do business in the name of your company, you are going to need some other company's name. So typically, whatever name you take, Technowrites, Creative Services, or whatever it is. So you'll need to register that as a proprietary concern. So, so as you can see here, Nondani Kramanka, so obviously there is some registration number. There is the name of the agency or the sanstha being registered, the person who's starting it, the type or the nature of business, so it says designing, writing and so on. The address, so it gives my address where I have registered my organization, and it says that so and so has been registered as a commercial establishment, and you can see the date here, which is 21/12/1994, correct? Now once you get a Shop Act license, you may also need to renew it, but that's another story. So typically you get a Shop Act license for 3 years or 5 years and so on, right? Now once you get the Shop Act license in the name of your business entity, you can go ahead and start doing business. The other option that you have is to have a partnership. Now I would not advise any one of you to get into a partnership. The reason for that is partnerships mostly are not very stable. So a lot of partnerships don't have life of, I would say, more than 3 to 4 years. I've seen a lot of proprietary concerns working for longer period of time. I've seen a lot of private limited companies working for a long period of time. But most of the times partnerships don't work for long. So unless you have got a very good understanding with your partner, unless your areas of work are extremely clear, unless you have distributed the responsibilities and you understand how and what part of work you are going to do and so on. And this part is most important. Unless you know how the expenses will be reported, how they will be deducted, and how the income will be shared. So unless you know all this, don't get into a partnership. The other option that you have is a private limited company. And this is where I am going to come back to Technowrites Private Limited. So Technowrites is a private limited company. What does that mean? It means that this is an incorporated company. We incorporated Technowrites, correct? Now what do I mean by that? So let me show that image to you, right? So you can see it here on the screen now. So let me pull it here. And it says that I have got a certificate of incorporation. Does it say that? What happened to my image? Right? So here you can see that it says certificate of incorporation. Now certificate of incorporation is only given to a company, correct? So which means that you have to register a business entity called as a company. A lot of people think that whatever they register is a company. So a proprietorship is not a company, correct? So this is not a company. Oops. So just trying to correct my typos. So partnership is not a company, correct? So once again, not a company. This is a company, correct? And this is also a company, which is public limited, correct? So what is private limited? Private limited is a company, so which means it has to be incorporated. Now what is the meaning of incorporated? As you can see here in the image, it says that this day, on this day, this particular company is incorporated as per Companies Act 1956. So in India there is a Companies Act which was passed in the year 1956, and to do business you have to be incorporated with a name. So Technowrites Private Limited is the name of the business entity. It's a company, it is incorporated. Anything that is incorporated, correct, is only a company. So a business entity like Shop Act is not an incorporated company. A partnership is not an incorporated company. To incorporate a company would be expensive. So if you want to get a Shop Act license, I think to get this, you need a Shop Act. And this will probably cost you about, let's say, rupees 1,500, correct? And you can find out where this is being done. I would suggest you to go to places like Just Dial and look for people who can help you to incorporate, or you can go to newspapers and you'll see a lot of people advertising saying that we can help you incorporate a company, or we can help you getting a Shop Act license and so on. To do business, you need to have a Shop Act. So Shop Act is also needed for this, right? Which is a private limited company, you need a Shop Act. Public limited, you still need a Shop Act, right? Here also you need a Shop Act. So this just means that you have registered a proprietorship. This is a private limited company. To incorporate a private limited company, you will need to spend at least 25,000 rupees, correct? Because you'll have to come up with what we call as articles of association or memorandum of association, and then you're actually going for incorporation and so on. Once you do the incorporation, you get something like this. So you get a letter of incorporation, correct? Now this image that I am showing you is a part of our articles of incorporation. So let me show you the first page of that. So this is that, and we call it as memorandum of association or articles of association. So that incorporation letter is a part of this particular book that I am showing you on the screen here, right? And let me show you the last page of this. So the last page is going to look like this, correct? So here, and you can see this is page number 12. So obviously there are 11 other pages which mention what is this company going to do, what will be its business areas and so on and so forth. And here it says that you have incorporated them in the name of 2 directors. Now I understand that there is a latest law that is passed, or there is some flexibility. So now you can actually incorporate with only one director, correct? But earlier you needed two directors, but I understand now you can incorporate with only one director. Anyway, to do this you may need some professional help, and I would sincerely suggest you to talk to a CA, that is a chartered accountant, or a CS, that's a company secretary, or somebody like that. Most of the times these people have a team, and this team will offer you the service of incorporating your company and so on. So that's how you get started. Now there is one more company which is a public limited company. Now let me give you some names or some examples. So one example is Infosys, or you have got TCS, or you have got Wipro, or you have got Reliance and so on. These are public limited companies. Now forming this is going to cost you in lakhs of rupees, correct? So this is going to be lakhs of rupees. And you do incorporate a public limited company when you are getting share capital from public, correct? Otherwise here also you are getting share capital, but then it comes from the directors or very few shareholders, correct? Here it comes from public. So you can literally have hundreds or thousands or lakhs of people investing in your company. So I assume that this is not something that you'll be interested in while we are talking about freelancing. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now if you need more information about it, a lot of sites are available, you can go and check that out. Now with that I'm going to go ahead, correct? So are we fine so far? Is everybody able to hear me? I can see your comments, so you can keep on posting your questions or your feedback, and I can answer the questions right away if I find them suitable. Otherwise I'll send you the answers or I'll answer them at the end of the session. Alright, so Jyotsna is saying that she is able to follow everything, so let's go ahead. Right? Now after you have done this, now what is the most important and the most difficult task in business or being your own boss or freelancing? It's marketing, correct? What is the most important thing that you will get if you are freelancing? Number one, freedom, correct? What is one thing that you need to fight for when you are a freelancer? Money, right? So you get a lot of freedom. This is an advantage, lot of freedom, and for this to be an advantage you have to know how to use it, correct? Most difficult thing to get will be money, and you will perhaps need to follow up, correct? Give credits, manage your finances, and so on. And what is that you need to do? So sell your services. Now, if you are not able to do these three things, which is you are not able to use your freedom, you are not able to market your services, you are not able to manage your money, my suggestion to you is be careful before you get into freelancing, because no matter what you get into, these three things are absolutely required, correct? So you will have to do them. So we have a question from Dinesh, and Dinesh is asking, is it necessary to have a Shop-Act license for freelancing? And my answer to that is, if you want to do business, in your own name, if you want to get money in your own name, correct, you will probably not need a Shop Act. You can simply say that I have done so and so work for so and so person and I have got paid. But if you want to have a business entity, so I think I have mentioned this earlier, so if you want to have a business entity where the name will become a brand, then you perhaps need to register. In any case, I would suggest that you register your own Shop-Act license. So that's your answer there, Dinesh. Now let's go ahead. So these three things are the most difficult things to do. One, handle freedom is most difficult, correct? Second, marketing your own services is most difficult. Third, manage your money, getting your money from your clients and so on is most difficult, correct? Is the shop act same called as Gumasta? Now I have no clue what is Gumasta, but you should talk to your CA or a CS, a company secretary, to find out what is shop act called in the state where you are staying. If I am not wrong, it is called a shop act license. It's as simple as that, correct? So just go and find out. I don't know if it has got an Indian name. Now, assuming that you go to a client, you get some work, you get an inquiry and the client asks you to start working and so on, what are you going to do? So before you actually go ahead and do the work, right, you are obviously going to give him a quotation, and that's the part I want to come to next. So here is a template of quotation that I have created for you. Actually it's a very old template, I did not create it because we have been using this ourselves. So as many of my students who are online right now would agree, I never teach something that I have not practiced. So whatever I show you, templates, questionnaires and so on, they are all part of my day-to-day work. Now let's look at this particular quotation and let's try to understand what parts are there and what's the significance of each of those parts that you see there, right? So let's go ahead. So number one, if it's a quotation, you are going to start with a date. So put a date in a format that is understandable and cannot be confused, because maybe you are working for somebody in US or Europe or some other place. So then you are going to say that day, month and year. Do not put numbers. So for example, do not put something like 2, 3, 15. For somebody, right, this is 2nd of March. For somebody else, this is 3rd of Feb. So I would not recommend anything like this. So better go ahead and say something like 2nd March 2015, or at least something like this, right? Why? Because this is not confusing. So I would put a date something like this here. Anyway, let's go ahead. Now to whom are you giving a quotation? A number of times nowadays we actually don't write this word to, right? I have put it here to avoid any confusion, but we may simply omit this and put the person's name here. It's as simple as that, right? But I have still put the word there, so let it be there. To so and so person, so and so company, address, phone number, email ID and so on. Dear sir and madam, I would expect you to find out whether this person is a sir or a madam, and then let the appropriate word be there. Remove the other one. Quotation for what? Now I never say quotation for technical writing or quotation for writing services. I would say quotation for designing and writing user guide for CMAC. So this is like the name of the system. This is my deliverable and this is the service that I am offering. So I like to be clear. So never say quotation for technical writing, because let's say you get a repeat order from that company next month. So you will give one more quotation for technical writing. So always mention the name of the project, service and your deliverable. That's a good idea. So typically a good starting line is, we thank you for sharing your requirements, and as discussed, please find below the quotation for so and so service. So obviously you are going to say designing and writing or something like that here, right? Now the quotation template that I have prepared is pretty generic, which means you may be able to use it for anything other than technical writing as well. So I am saying that this is my list of activities. So scope of work, this is there in my list. So I am going to say designing, writing, formatting, building a help file and so on and so forth, right? List of deliverables. So I'll say something like user guide, help file, release notes and so on, right? Now along with this, I also like to mention what is not there in my scope of work. So for example, I'll say there is no drawing of circuit diagrams in my work, no graphic design in my work. I'm not going to prepare a data sheet. I'm not going to prepare a white paper. So better be clear about what is your scope and what's not in your scope. a lot of discussions or debates may may happen related to this point. Better be clear about that. Next we come to price. Now here you are going to say what's that you are going to charge. So Indian rupees, and then you are going to say, if you get that rupee symbol now, you can paste that here. It really looks quite neat. So write the rupees, and it's very important to write the amount in numbers here. By mistake, if you forget a zero or add a zero, you will realize that when you are typing out the amount here in words. And even if you don't realize there is a mismatch, maybe the client will realize. So this is sort of a check that you have written the correct thing here, right? So same thing as what we do on writing a banker's check or something like that. So put in number, put in words. Taxes. Now whatever taxes are available. Right now, I believe our services are taxable to 12.36%. Very soon, which is starting from 1st of April, I believe this is going to be 14% tax, right? So you need to mention that very clearly, what is the tax. Now, if you are working alone, be careful about this. And this is why I would say once again that talk to an accountant, talk to a company secretary, because they will be able to tell you whether your services are taxable or not. I don't want a situation where you have, let's say, done projects worth 5 lakh rupees, and next year somebody from the sales tax or service tax department catches you and says that, sir, your services are taxable, and since you have done a business of 5 lakhs, let's pay a tax of 14% on 5 lakhs. Now at that point of time, if you go to a client, the client will most certainly not pay you any additional amount. The client is going to say, you had quoted for X amount, I have paid X, end of story. Correct? So remember that. So whatever taxes are available, if sales tax is available, write that. If VAT is available, VAT is value added tax, write that. But better make sure that you are clear about this. Now if there is service tax available, you will need to do what we call as service tax registration. Correct? So for any tax that you may want to pay, you may have to do registration and get a number from the government. So that the government can say, okay, your VAT registration number is so and so, your service tax registration number is so, and so on. By default, I put the validity of quotation as 30 days. Now you may want to change this. So you can say it is 15 days, you can say it is 60 days or so on. It's an industry standard to put it as 30 days or 15 days, right? What does this mean? This means that I have given the quotation on 31st of March, you are finalizing order on 15th of May, I may have to give a quotation again before, maybe the quotation that I have given before is probably not valid anymore, right? So you may want to say that. Payment terms. We come to a very important and interesting part here. So most of the times I do ask for advance, correct? If you say that the client should pay you at the end of the project, if the project gets delayed, trust me, your payment is going to get delayed as well. The client is not going to say that I am sorry the project is getting delayed, but then why should we delay your payment, so here is the money. This won't happen in 99% of the cases. And that remaining 1% has not happened in my life in last 21 years. So make sure that you get some advance from the company. Now how much? I'll put that to you to decide. Right? Okay. Now instead of doing that, if it's a big project, what you can also do is something like this. So you may say that I want 25% advance, alright, and then I want, let's say 25%, I'll say is against first draft, right, and I'll say 25% against the second draft, and I'll say 25% within 15 working days of completion. Correct? So I'll leave that to you. What do you want to choose here? You decide. Most certainly ask for advance. Now there is something funny here and it's very important to know. What is that? Even if you ask for advance and you may think that okay, so I'm going to work on a 1 month project where the client is going to give me an advance. If that client is a company like Infosys or TCS, they are not going to give you a check on very next day of starting the work, or not even on the same day when you are going to start the work. In fact, they'll say, okay, give us your advance invoice. And after this quotation template, I'm going to explain the invoice template. Now you give them the advance invoice or the pro forma invoice. Against that, they'll start processing your payment. What does that mean? It means your payment processing has started. It doesn't mean your money has been received. Typically, the payment processing may take something like 8 to 15 days. Typically, there could also be a default credit period of 1 to 2 months. And what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that is, let's say, let me open oops, no, this is no use, right? So what I'm going to say here is, let's go to that notepad, right? And let me type here. So let's say you started working on 1st of March, all right? And your payment processing started on this date, correct? After the processing is done, so let's say that is 8th of March, there will be the credit period. And this could be, let's say, 60 days, for example. All right. Now, what does that mean? Your payment will come to you 8th of March, 8th of April, 8th of May. This is where you will get your advance payment. And by this time, you may actually have completed your work. Correct? So be careful about the payment terms that you are going to sign with the client. Sometimes after you give the client a quotation, a client may give you a MSA. MSA is a master service agreement, and the client will put his own terms and conditions there, just like you are putting your terms and conditions in the quotation. Correct? So anyway, be careful about that. So sometimes you may get your advance after your work is done, and that's the reason it's very important to ask for advance. Now imagine if your work is done on, let's say, 30th of April, right? So 30th April your work is done, right? Now you will give an invoice after that. So let's say processing starts here. Processing ends, let's say, on 8th of May. When are you going to get your payment? 8th of July. Correct? So it's very important that you keep this in mind. Some people may pay early, but just then be ready for that. Right? Now that brings us to the terms and conditions. So typically I ask for a purchase order or a work order and an advance payment. Correct? Now if the client is not giving me a purchase order or a work order, I still ask the client for approval email. Correct? And why is that? I do that to ensure that one individual in the organization cannot take me for a ride. Otherwise somebody will give me a verbal approval. There is no evidence of that. After I have done the work, maybe that person has left the organization. Now there is nobody going to pay me. Maybe that person says, I don't remember this conversation. So there is nothing to prove that they have accepted your terms and conditions and they have asked you to start the work. Right? So I typically put this and say that please give me a purchase order or an agreement. Now I put this in most of the cases saying that you will hold the copyrights of the material. That is, a client will hold the copyrights, and the client will also be responsible for the information that I have put in there. Correct? I will not be responsible for the information, its use, misuse, and the resulting gains or losses. Now this is a term that I put saying that you will not hire our writers for a period of X number of months, right, from the date of completion. And I can tell you that at least 5 times it has happened with Technowrites in last 20 years or 21 years that the client, after starting the work, has made an offer to the writer that we had put to work on that project, directly hired that person, and then never paid us for our project. Correct? So it's a good idea to put this term condition, this term over there. It will be easy to catch that client afterwards. So we say that we guarantee to protect your information and so on. I think all this is clear enough. We will be assigning X number of resources to the project. We will sign, or we have already signed the NDA with the client and so on. Now I'm not sure if this will be applicable, but I have still added it here just to make sure that you do not forget this part. Correct? So what is this part? So I am saying that in addition to the above charges, we'll also pass on the incidental expenses. Now this may be within the city traveling expense, out of city traveling expense, phone calls, lodging charges and so on. Maybe you are giving a fixed cost project to the client. Maybe you are not going to charge anything additional. But in that case, make sure you have added all this in your fixed price. So if you are going to make 5 visits and per visit your cost is 400, add 2000 to that. Correct? There are no out of city traveling expenses, add 0 to that. If you are probably going to make 30 calls, add at least 100 rupees to that. Why? That's not just for your phone. Maybe you are also going to use your internet modem or whatever. So something has to be included. Lodging charges, maybe there are none. So whatever you think has to be added, add it. If this is not applicable, remove it. Correct? Now sometimes I know that as many of you would know, I also work as a corporate trainer. So many times the client will say that we'll not pay for this, but we'll arrange for this. So the client says that I'm not going to pay you for the hotel, but then I'll arrange for the hotel and we'll pay the hotel directly. I'll not pay you for the airfare, but then we'll send you the ticket. Correct? I'm not going to pay you for the food, but I suggest that you have food at the hotel and it will automatically be taken care of when we pay the bill to the hotel. Something like that. So the client may make arrangements for all this. It's very important to write this. Any other work done will be charged additional. Right? Add one more clause to this. Now I'm going to type it here. So which is this quotation supersedes all earlier estimates and quotations. Correct? So there should not be any doubt whatsoever in anybody's mind as to what is the final price. A number of times the client may negotiate the price and ask you to submit a fresh quotation. Correct? So then you'll have to say that, boss, this is the revised quotation. So now this price, whatever it is, less or more, this is what is applicable. Right? Are you all able to hear me? Am I doing fine? Anagha says that she is not able to hear me. So let's go ahead. So we trust that you'll find our information in order and then you can go ahead and sign that. Correct? So yes. So this is your quotation template. The next template that I want to show you is an invoice template. Right? Now before we go ahead and do that, do we have any questions? So let me take any questions. Alright, so I assume that there are no questions, so let's go ahead. Now the second part that I'm going to explain, or the third part in today's session that I'm going to explain, is the invoice template. So this was my agenda, so the quotation template part is done, so let's move on to the invoice template. So I'm using the quotation and the invoice to make a lot of points about freelancing, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. So once again, put a date there, correct? Put the name, company name, address and so on and so forth. Invoice for so and so. Now here you will say invoice for first draft of so and so user guide and so on. Correct? Should any clause about disputes be added to the quotation? Things like disputes are not added to quotation, they are added to contracts. Correct? And the client is anyway going to send you a contract. So you should talk about disputes in the contracts. Maybe they are not mentioned in the quotation. Now, is there a rule that they cannot be mentioned in the quotation? No. So if you want to go ahead and add it, Shirish, please feel free to do that. There is no such rule that says that you cannot mention about disputes or disagreements in quotation. So you can mention it in your terms and conditions. Alright, so coming back to invoice. So subject, invoice for so and so. And I would recommend you to write something like first draft of user guide of CMS or whatever is your system name. We are glad to submit the invoice and so on. Now this is what we call as a covering letter. Correct? So this is not really the invoice. This is a covering letter. Right? And this is typically what we write. Let us know if any more information is required, and then early payment will be appreciated and so on. Now, if you are giving an invoice on, let's say, a time and material basis, so you are also going to say the early report is attached, correct? Or maybe the approved hourly report is attached. So somebody, you have probably maintained a list of the hours that you have worked, you have got it approved from the project manager, you may need to attach it. This is if you are going to do it on T&M, that is time and material basis or hourly basis. Otherwise, you may not need to attach that, right? Alright, so let's go ahead. Invoice. So this is actual invoice. Now, if you have got a service tax that I mentioned earlier, you'll have to write that number here. If you have not written that number here, the client is not liable to pay you the service tax. The client can simply say, since you have not mentioned the service tax number, we are not going to pay the service tax. Correct? It's important to write ECC number. ECC number, in other words, is the service tax number. Correct? A PAN number. PAN number is your permanent account number, which is also your income tax number. Now, if you have got an incorporated company, correct? So for example, I have got Technowrites Private Limited, right? So Technowrites Private Limited has got another PAN number of its own. So Technowrites Private Limited doesn't have its, doesn't use Makra. Alright, so we'll just hang on for a couple of minutes to see if others are joining in. So can you see my screen now? Girish, are you able to see the screen now? Alright, terrific. So here we go. So I'm going to go back to the invoice that we are talking about. So your ECC number, your PAN number, and as I said, if you have got a company registered, then it will have a separate PAN number. Any other registration number, VAT, tax or anything, so you may want to write that here. So just a placeholder. If none of these are applicable, remove all of them. I believe that even if you are working as a freelancer, you have not got a business entity registered, the company may still want you to write your PAN number. So this is what you'll end up having in any case. So PAN number is what you need to have bare minimum. So may be required in all cases, right? Again, person name and so on and so forth. Now, date of the invoice and an invoice number. Now, invoice number could be something like, so let's say I'll say 2015 and I'll say -001. So which means this is the first invoice I'm giving in 2015, right? Now, I may even write something like TCS 001. So which means the invoice that I have generated for TCS in this year. Now this coding is my coding. I can write and I can choose any coding that I want, right? So this is not something mandatory from the government. There is no mandatory format. So you should do this so that when you send another invoice, instead of 001, you are going to say 002 or 3 and so on. So let's say you end up delivering 4 invoices, then you are going to say, okay, this was first, this was second, and so on and so forth, right? Now, in addition to that, sometimes the companies will ask you to mention a reference number. So if a company is a big company and they give you a contract, or then they raise a PO, that is a purchase order for you, then they may have an internal reference. This internal reference is tied to their purchase order, or it may be even tied to their business head, right? So their profit center or whatever. So in that case, they'll tell you that number, saying that give us this particular number so that we can use it, right? So if you write that number here, then they'll be able to link all your invoices to that particular purchase order or that particular project or that particular business head, right? So this is a number that the client may have communicated to you to use. This number is not the invoice number. So let's say for one project I am generating 4 invoices, this number will change. This number, if it is for the same project, the reference number may not change. In fact, it may remain constant. Alright? Are we alright with this so far? You are all able to see my screen, I guess, yes. So let's go ahead. Right? Now after that description of your services, so designing and writing of so and so user guide, first draft. So whatever is there, you are going to put that there. Correct? Again, charges in rupees. Now instead of rupees, you may want to write dollars if you are generating an invoice in dollars or whatever the other currency may be. Right? Service or any other tax to be added, so you can mention that here. Total you can say is Indian rupees so many only. So once again, total in words and then total here as well. Right? Note, kindly make arrangements for early payment, thank you, and then payment instructions. Now this is very important. A lot of companies today will make a net banking payment. Or payment through net banking, correct? So what does that mean? That means that they are actually crediting amount to your account number. And in this case, it's very important for you to write the account number, correct? Now when you give account number, you may also have to give what is called, I think, IFSC code. Is that right? There is IFSC code. So you may have to give IFSC code which says that the IFSC code will identify the bank, alright, and the account number identifies you. So when they make a payment, they'll have to use the IFSC code so that it doesn't end up into a wrong account or whatever. So if you are expecting online payments, you may have to give this, right? If you are doing projects or client abroad, you may have to give what is called as SWIFT code. And if you are doing work with clients abroad, I'd recommend you to ask them to send payments by what is called as wire transfer, correct? Now what is wire transfer? Wire transfer is where your client or whosoever is paying you pays an additional amount of, let's say, $50 or $100 and says that please credit this money to Makaran's account or Technowrites' account. Now when the money is sent to wire transfer, typically you will get the credit within, let's say, 48 hours. Right? If on the other hand the client sends you a check which is, let's say, payable in New York, correct? Now you get that check here, you deposit it in your bank in Pune. For you to actually get your money, it could take something like 15 to 30 days. On top of that, the bank will charge you for the conversion from US dollars to Indian rupees, correct? So be very careful about it. So if you are getting money from abroad, ask for a wire transfer, right? And for that you will have to give a SWIFT code. Now who will give you the SWIFT code? Talk to your banker. Go to your bank, tell them, boss, I am expecting so and so payment and I need to send a wire transfer instructions. So wire transfer instructions will not be something as simple as this. So you may have something like 2-3 lines here, right? So saying that kindly transfer or remit to so and so account, so and so SWIFT code, so and so bank, so and so branch. So there will be 2-3 lines here which says that it has to go to so and so account. If you do not give the SWIFT code properly, if you do not give the wire transfer instructions properly, your money will come to the bank, but the bank will keep it in what is called a suspense account. That means the bank is not able to figure out to whom this money is to be paid. And then you will have to spend a lot of time and energy in trying to prove that the money was yours. So make sure that you are clear on all those points, right? And then you get it done very systematically. So this is very important for you. If you are doing it in India, yeah, I think maybe this is good enough, right? If you are going to get payment online, you may use services like PayPal, correct? And typically people ask me this question, how can I get payment from PayPal? So you'll have to open an account with PayPal. And for that you'll need to understand how does PayPal work and so on and so forth. And that means the client will pay through PayPal and you'll need to link this link to your bank account. So whatever money comes to your PayPal account, you'll need to tell PayPal that link it to my bank account. Why would PayPal do that? PayPal will do that because they'll charge something like 2 or 3% of what you're getting as their services. So using PayPal, it will be easier to pay you. But then getting all that done is not as easy as it seems. That's point number one. Point number two, a lot of people ask me, can I not get a credit card payment online? Correct? So I think PayPal will be easier, but to get things like credit card or debit card or net banking payments and so on, to do all this, correct, you need to have what we call as payment gateway. So you'll need to have a payment gateway integrated. Now this is going to be a cost in itself, and this will also be a sort of a little bit of technical challenge. So unless you are expecting a lot of money to come to your account, that too every day and things like that, I'll not recommend you to go ahead with a payment gateway. I'll not recommend you to do that. Correct? So maybe just ask them to pay to your bank. So just like your friend is sending you money, or just like you are sending money to the electricity board, making their payments online, or paying to Tata Docomo or whatever, just ask them to pay that money online. As simple as that. To get that money directly to your account, you do not need to have an account with PayPal. You don't need to have a payment gateway integration and so on and so forth. Just give them the instructions, ask them to pay. Correct? Or then simply ask them to pay by check. So you can say kindly make payment by check. Correct? By check. Favoring whatever, Technowrites Private Limited or whatever it is. Right? So mention that here. Correct? So then they'll make your payment by check. So you'll need to collect a check or whatever. So there are a lot of ways of getting this done. This is perhaps the simplest one. This is a little bit more complex, but then you can use this for international payments also. Now I need to mention here that there was some issue with the foreign exchange regulation or the way PayPal is managing their accounts. So RBI has made it mandatory. RBI stands for Reserve Bank of India. So Reserve Bank of India has made it mandatory to link your bank account to PayPal account, and I think they also make it mandatory to link only one account. Now having said that, I am not really updated on that, so you can go and check this out. Correct? For wire transfer, you need to write something like this. Alright, so do we have any questions on this? So any questions, feel free to ask. Alright, so Shirish is saying that my corporate clients usually deduct a 10% TDS and send me a receipt from the income tax department. I never added that amount in the invoice that I give them. Is it as advisable to do that? So TDS is not like service tax. Correct? So you cannot say that, boss, my charges are 1 lakh and 10% is TDS. TDS is tax deduction at source. It's a part of income tax. Alright? So you'll probably not be able to add a TDS like you add a service tax. So you cannot say my money is lakh rupees and I am charging 10% TDS on that. TDS is not like a service tax. You cannot add it on top of, whatever is your amount. You cannot add it over there. So what is TDS? TDS is tax deduction at source, and they have to send that to you. They have to cut that money and give you what is called as a Form 16. Alright? So what is a Form 16? Now Form 16 is something, Form 16 is a proof, right, of having paid your tax to the government. Now what you do is, when you file your annual income tax return, you attach all the Form 16s that you have got, right? So let's say if as per your annual tax return, right, your tax liability, let's say was, for example, let's say your tax liability was 48,000 rupees, correct? And then somebody has already cut a TDS of, let's say, 12,000 rupees. So you are going to say 48 less 12,000, which was TDS. So you can say now my liability is only what? 36,000. Correct? In fact, if your liability is less, you'll have to ask the government to pay that TDS back to you. Now in my long career of 20 years, this has not happened a number of times. Yes, I have got some money paid back. Now I tell you the amount, and this will change, and I suggest that on this matter you talk to a accountant or maybe somebody who's expert in income tax. So if I thought that I should have got, let's say, 50,000 from the government at times has paid me 8,000, saying that, oh, we just thought that, this is what your tax rebate should have been. So have I got tax rebate? Yes, I have got tax rebate. Not a lot of amount though, correct? So once that money is cut, so you should consciously keep in your mind, Shirish, that when you are going to ask the customer for money, the customer is going to cut TDS. By the way, there is a limit for cutting TDS. So any payment, correct, below rupees 20,000, it's not mandatory to cut TDS on that. But this 20,000 is per year. I don't think you will be in a business to earn 19,000 per year. So which obviously means that the company is going to think that, am I paying Shirish 20,000 rupees in a year? So the current bill is 15,000, maybe there will be one more 7,000 bill, so let's cut TDS, correct? Any incorporated company, so which means all private and public companies have to deduct TDS. It's mandatory for them. Alright. Next question. Would disclosing account number is a bit of security concern? I don't think so. You are just giving an account number. Correct? You are not giving him a right to withdraw money from there. In fact, you should give your account number to as many people as you can. अगर किसी के मन में आया कि बॉस इसको 10,000 रुपए भेजते तो अच्छा है ना, right? So I don't think your account number is a security concern or anything like that. Yes, your PIN number is a security concern. Account number is not a security concern. In fact, many companies will even ask you to give them a cancelled check because the check proves that your account number is so and so. Correct? And on the check there are some other security numbers that the banks has added. There is something called as a MICAR number and so on and so forth. I'll not get into all that, but they are trying to ensure that you actually have a legitimate account in a legitimate bank. So many companies may actually tell you before making a payment, yes, we'll need a cancelled check. You say, but you are my client, how can I pay you? Where is the need to give you a cancelled check? They are just trying to establish that you indeed have an account in the bank that you mentioned and your account number mentioned is correct. Correct? In case while working with US dollars, what is the best way to get money in Indian rupees? Check. If you are working in US or if you are working for clients abroad, correct, I would recommend you to get money in US dollars and that too by wire transfer. Correct? Why is that? Remember one thing, your bank will and cannot pay you US dollars. Correct? Which means they will have to pay you INR, which is Indian rupees. Correct? if you have to make money in US dollars and keep that money as US dollars, you will need to have a special account called as EEFC, which is an Exchange Earners Foreign Currency account. Now this is fairly complicated, but if you are dealing in US dollars, go and talk to your bank about it. Ask them about the EEFC account. They'll tell you more about it. Correct? In EEFC account, you can earn money in US dollars and you can retain it in US dollars. Why would I recommend you to get money in US dollars? Number one, if your client is in USA, it is easier for the client to send US dollars. That's point number one. Correct? Point number two, US dollar is considered to be a strong currency than Indian rupees in international markets. In fact, sometimes it has also happened that the client wanted to pay me $1,000, he delayed it, but in the meantime the exchange rate got changed, so I actually got more money in Indian rupees. Correct? That's another point. Third point, and this could be very important, Sangeeta, so you have asked a very good question. Third point is, if you are earning foreign exchange, correct? Indian government may offer some special schemes to you. Correct? What does that mean? So let me give you an example. So if I raise an invoice on Infosys India, I'll have to add tax. If I raise an invoice on Infosys US and I categorically say that you are going to make me payment in US dollars only, Indian government will say, oh, in that case you don't need to pay tax. So then my invoice will be less. So on 1 lakh rupees to Infosys India, I'll charge 1,12,036. Correct? Infosys USA, I'll say 1 lakh rupees converted into US dollars. So obviously I'll not give them a quotation in Indian rupees. I'll do the conversion on my side and I'll say, okay, my charges are going to be 1,800 USD. Now when that happens, what happens is you get incoming funds in the form of foreign exchange. This helps the company. This helps the country. And this is a policy with a lot of countries. But then these policies keep on changing. So if any one of you is not in India and you are attending this session from, let's say, Singapore, Africa, Zambia or somewhere else, then better check the policies of your local government. So if you are not charging tax, then your services become affordable to that particular client. Correct? Also make sure from the client that the client is not going to deduct something, because some US companies, what they do is, for work done in India, they may make a deduction and they may make a payment to the US government. Correct? So make sure that does not happen. So bit of complexity there, but you can take care of it. Correct? Alright. Do we have any more questions? I think our time is already over. Do we have any more questions? Right. So one question that people typically ask is, how do I build a website? Correct? So how do I build a website? So I would say go to something like Google Business Apps, correct? Or go to Big Daddy, correct? You can also go to WordPress, correct? So you can build your website at all these places. There are many others. So for example, there's something called as HostGator, correct? But HostGator servers are in Texas, so you'll be making payments in dollars. Just Host, and so on and so forth. So a lot of sites. So let me quickly open Big Daddy for you. Not Big Daddy. What is that? GoDaddy. Yeah. So this is a GoDaddy website, and as you can see, they have very clearly mentioned that if you want to have a website, you need three things. Number one, you need domain name. Correct? So you need a domain name, right? So it will be something like Technowrites.com, and that's the reason I also mentioned earlier that don't work in your own name. Create a business entity, something like Technowrites, right? Second is you'll need to put a website, and for designing that you'll need site space where you can host it. Second is perhaps you will need a website designer. Now GoDaddy offers you an online designer that you can use, and then you'll need a domain specific email ID. So instead of using makaran.pandit@gmail.com and saying that I'm a freelancer, I'd probably say mac@technowrites.com. That creates a better image, right? So these three things, and as you can see at GoDaddy it is saying that it starts at 99 per month. Now typically when they are saying 99 per month, they could be selling you something like maybe a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. Otherwise this increases to something like 130 or 160 rupees per month. But that is fine. I think it's a worthwhile investment to create. Correct? If you go to Google Business, so if you go to Google Business Apps, now you can create a site using Google Business Apps also. Google also has got a site builder and so on. The biggest advantage of using Google Business Apps is whenever you are using Google Business Apps for creating a website, you will get a site specific email ID, one. So you will get one site or domain specific email ID in the same price. How much does Google Business charge? When I checked last time, Google Business charges 175 rupees per month. Correct? But then in addition to that, now since you have got a Gmail or a Google Business app, you will be able to configure that easily on your mobile. So your email becomes configurable on mobile. It becomes configurable on iPad or whatever tablet you are using. Since you are having a Google Business app, you will be able to use a Google Clock. You will be able to use Google Live. What is it? Not Live. What is it called? Google Plus. Correct? You will be able to create any number of Google groups. You will be able to create multiple number of sites and so on. So you will have to choose between all these options that I have given here. Correct? So good website, a reasonably good website will cost you something like 200 rupees per month. If you are careful enough, yeah, you'll actually find that this is a very good investment. And you should have your own business card and things like that to do that. What is the way to charge? So what you should do is either you charge on hourly basis, correct, or you charge the fixed price. How would you come to a fixed price? So you will need to prepare an estimate of the work, correct? Then based on the estimate, count how many hours you are going to charge them, correct? How much are you going to add for resources? So which means hardware, software, internet, phone, and so on, correct? Maybe traveling and any other expenses. So let's say you get an amount here which is 50,000, correct? So I would say add 15% buffer to that, right? Now how do we really start from preparing or understanding a scope of the work to preparing estimate and so on and so forth? All this is beyond the scope of this webinar, and we actually cover it in our technical writing batches. Can we have a webinar on marketing, content writing or technical writing? Yes, we can have a webinar on that, but then this will be, again, this is beyond the scope of the current session. Now there are different approaches and I'll just mention them here. So one is online, correct? Second is direct sales. Third is cold calling, correct? And so on. A few others are there. So if you want to go to online sales, use sites like Elance, right? Or Freelance, or iFreelance, or Freelancer, I think. and so on. So on all these sites, you'll be able to work as a freelancer. So essentially, you create an account there as per their terms and conditions, pay them for either membership or percentage of revenue and so on. Yeah, Odesk. Yeah, so there are a lot of them. I think there are at least 20 of them, right? So there are many sites there. Direct sales is where you will need to approach a company. For this, you should be on the lookout for what company is advertising, what company is looking for writers. Maybe you can look at newspapers, you can look at sites like Naukri.com, Monster.com. Most of these companies who are looking for writers may not really get writers when they want them, or even if they get them, maybe not of the required skill level. So you can always get in touch with the manager saying that, here, I'm a freelancer and I can offer you a service to do this. Maybe it will be your entry point. It will take time to materialize and work out and so on. What is cold calling? Cold calling is either making phone calls, right, or making visits. Now this is a technique that most of the hardcore sales or marketing people use. What they do is they decide the area where they want to go. They carry a bunch of brochures and a bunch of business cards with them, and they just go on knocking the door of every good company that they think will be in need, right? Nowadays, cold calling has become difficult, right? One thing that you should definitely have if you are doing freelancing, in fact, two things that you should have. Number one, you should have a portfolio. So what is portfolio? Samples of your work. Correct? In addition to that, try to have some references of clients. So a client trusts another client. That's how it works. So portfolio is something that you should have. Second is, nowadays you should also have a LinkedIn profile, because many people will go there and check for your experience and so on and so forth. Is it possible to freelance when you have whatever? Is it possible to freelance when you are working full time? Yes, you can freelance part time. So part time opportunities are available. But then when you are working part time, don't expect the biggest orders, right? Because obviously the client is going to say, listen, you are already committed to somebody else for 8 or 10 hours a day. So don't take a project from me which need 500 hours of work. So I call it as auxiliary income, correct? So don't expect big orders. So I would say you can expect small orders. Correct? So which means maybe a few hundred rupees, a few thousand rupees and so on. Don't expect to get a freelance project of 10 lakh rupees when you are working as a part-time. Correct? Yes, so I guess I have answered a lot of questions. Now before we end, let me mention and let me show you something here. So give me a minute please to do that. So we have got some Google groups, right, of our students that we are maintaining. So I'm just trying to show you something from there. So alright, so what I am showing you is a web page of our Google group, right? And herein you can see that we keep on sending a lot of requirements. So this is posted on what? I think this is 7th of Feb, right? So I have posted a mail saying that 3D PLM software, now this is a company in Pune, needs a technical writer where a fresher can apply. So you'll see a lot of places like that. Knowledge Podium needs a tech writer and freshers can apply. Correct? So and so needs a freelance technical content writer for a website and so on. So we keep on getting a lot of mails like this, right? So this is not really the most modern group that we have. So let me show you another one. So here is another group. So can you see here? So we keep on pasting or we keep on posting a lot of requirements to people who are part of our group. And our group membership obviously is given to people who do our courses. So you can join our course. If you join our course, you will obviously get much more than what I just told you. I do help people to prepare quotations. I have worked with a lot of companies, so I do help people to choose the right kind of company or give them valued advice and so on. In addition to all the things that you just saw, so let me show you that as well. Right, so I believe you are able to see my screen now. So in addition to the templates that I explained, which is a quotation template, an invoice template and so on, there are so many templates that we are giving, right, to our students. So template of appointment letter, client agreement, so I think we mentioned about dispute, consultant agreement and non-disclosure agreement and so on and so forth. So this is material that we give to people who join our freelancing course. Right? Now in addition to that, there are a lot of videos and there are a lot of role plays and things like that. So let me just show you a role play of a content writer. Now video does not typically get transmitted very well on this tool of webinar, but may just give you an idea, right? I think I have some issue with the video. So I think you may be able to see this. So you may not be able to hear to the entire audio. It will come in breaks. Now what I am saying is there are a lot of
years I'm writing in the creative field. I wrote some drama scripts as well as
I don't know the final
so there are good and bad role plays out here. We also have got role plays on topics like negotiation. There are many more topics that we cover in our proper freelancing course. So we have a proper freelancing course created for technical writers. If you are interested in more information about that, you can just drop me an email, or if you know my colleague, you can drop him an email. Let me mention my email ID here for you. So my name is Makarand Pandit. I believe all of you know that. A lot of people also call me Mac. Alright, and my email ID is mac@technowrites.com. Alright, so that's my name and that's my email ID. I think the session got interrupted, but I believe I did talk for more than 1.5 hours. Yes, we started at 7:30, it's 9:05. So I have created recordings of both the sessions. I don't know how much has got saved because the session got interrupted. But if anything has got saved, I'll try to see if I can share this video. Right? So thank you everyone for joining me today. So thanks for joining and I wish you good luck as a freelancer. Just a parting thought. Remember, freelancing is more about doing business than just doing technical writing. So just because you know technical writing doesn't mean you will succeed in freelancing. In fact, the biggest advantage that I can tell you is if you become a freelancer, there will be a greater development of your personality, a complete overall development of your personality. When you are working in a company, you just tend to work on some specific skills. As a freelancer, you are supposed to be more versatile, managing your freedom, managing your finances and so on. So I wish all of you happy freelancing. Thanks for joining me. Please feel free to give me feedback. So you can do that now, or you can also send me an email. All right? Okay. All right. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining me, and good night to all of you. It was wonderful talking or interacting with all of you today. Bye-bye. God bless.